We're back. Out of the Wilderness Ministries podcast is launching season 2.
We've really missed you guys.
And we're more excited than ever to share God's word.
We want to answer tough questions this season and hopefully really encourage you in your faith.
Don't miss what's coming next.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Out of the Wilderness Ministries podcast. I'm your host, Owen. This is my wife, Misty.
And I'm Derek McCoy, and this is my wife, Andrea.
We also have a new addition to the podcast room. My wife is wearing him right here. This is our 8-pound, 21-inch Jeremiah Cottle.
In the flesh.
The OTW baby.
Yeah.
OTW baby is officially here.
That's right.
And been excited about that for a long time because I guess that she's been pregnant the whole time just about we've been recording the podcast. So
Yeah,
that's the first
true.
time he's actually...
I'm not even sure we ever announced it on the podcast.
I don't know that we did.
So you guys may be shocked.
yeah.
We danced around the idea a few times, but I don't think we ever actually did.
Yeah,
That you
maybe not,
mentioned
yeah.
Surprise.
it.
We've took a long break from the podcast, but there's been a reason for that, right? We've initially what started our break was we were impacted. Our area where we live in East Tennessee was impacted by Hurricane Helene, which most people I'm sure have heard about and everything like that. And as our area was impacted, we felt that there was opportunities for us to actually put boots on the ground and be able to go contribute something that people need.
Yep.
And so we did that in a lot of different ways.
Yep. And for season 2, episode 1, we just want to kind of get back in the saddle and tell you where we've been and what we've been into.
We took a break for quite a while, and there was a lot of people asking about why we left and everything like that, and if we was going to kick back up and get started. But there was a good reason why we had to take a break from the podcast, and that reason is just Hurricane Helene.
Yeah.
Come through and devastated our area, real close to us anyway, in western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. And we saw a good opportunity during that time that, hey, our community needs us. This is a good opportunity for us to go out and be able to give supplies and things to our community that they need. And while doing so, also be able to share God's word with them and give them hope and encouragement in times where many people had lost everything.
Yeah.
And so we took that break to do that. And that's really kind of continued from when it happened, September.
We
all
got
the
into a
way-
lot of activities. Was it
We went
September?
offline, pretty much.
It was late
We just started
September.
working
Yeah, we-
behind the
October when it
scenes.
hit.
We got so busy that just
Yeah.
like everything just kind of
It was
dropped.
like we were doing things, but it wasn't online.
Yeah.
Everything that we
Yeah.
were doing
It
was
wasn't
kind
in
of
real
the
life.
way we started out of the Wilderness Ministries, was kind of like wanting to be the hands and feet of Jesus and make an impact
Yeah.
in our communities. And that was such a great opportunity for us to do that. And no, we weren't making podcast episodes out of it, but I enjoyed it because we were actually interacting with real people that needed it.
Yeah.
It was different in a way that that's kind of one of the things we talked about when we founded this ministry, that we wanted to be able to do a lot of boots on the ground thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the social
so-
media and podcast was ultimately always supposed to be like a vehicle to get
Yeah.
us to a point where we could do boots on the ground, and that's
It's
pretty
very
much exactly
done
what
that.
it did.
I
Yeah,
mean, it
Lord blessed
exactly
us,
did
man.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was an answered prayer.
We were able to immediately, as the hurricane come through and devastated this area, and so many homes lost and loved ones that were lost, and homes, vehicles, that people lost everything, businesses.
It's terrible.
They're still not back to
Yeah,
normal.
still.
No.
But the podcast, in a way, and this ministry, in a way, has kind of allowed us a position to actually capitalize on that moment where we, had the means and were
Yeah.
able to go and assist these people.
Yeah.
And so you want to kind of tell them what we did from the time that we heard about all the devastation. and
Absolutely.
everything?
Yeah, man. See, one of the big things that I was amazed by, and this is just God, is when Hurricane Helene happens, right? We started out with devotionals, right? And then we kind of moved into some other social media stuff that we were doing, and then we kept saying we're going to do a podcast. Kept doing, well, when are you going to do the podcast? We kept getting asked, when are you going to do it? Well, we're trying, And we started this podcast out with a phone and some lapel mics. You
Yeah,
know,
harder to do a podcast than maybe we had initially
Yeah, it takes a
thought.
lot.
Yeah.
A lot of technical equipment needed.
Yeah, we actually had some comments when because we kind of started on Facebook, really. We recorded because we were so used to doing Facebook stuff. And then once we made the transition to YouTube, we didn't know that there was differences in how, the way the camera sits and quality. And so,
Yeah.
although I thought we had some good episodes, there was comments on the video quality and stuff, but it was literally shot off our phone and we'd never done anything like that.
Yeah.
And then, we did eventually get the podcast off the ground and get some better equipment, and we had a lot of good support. But long story short, going back to where Owen was talking about, is all of those elements, right, build us up to a point where people knew we had a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting approached, Owen started getting approached for people to be able to put money in something they had faith in. And that was the biggest humbling thing, I thought, is that they knew that if they gave us the money that we needed to do a few things, like, we were going to do it. Like, we weren't just going to pocket that money. That's one of the things about charity work that I hate is I want to put my money into something that I know is going to help somebody that's real.
You want to be able to see it.
Exactly. But the way charities work is, most of the people who run the charities pocket the money, and then I think
A
it's
lot of charities. I mean, probably I would say the majority is something like
I think it's only like 10 or 15%.
Yeah,
It's
it's
extremely
low.
low.
extremely
What
low.
actually goes out.
Yeah, you give $100 to something, and
You might get a nickel.
$10 of it might actually go to what you give it for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to be that way,
No.
and I feel like that's one of the ways this is, well, it is how we were able to do so much with what we've been given is because we didn't pocket nothing. We
No,
wasn't.
no, we put it
everything
all
Not
back.
paid.
went to.
Yeah,
No.
we're not paid. Thank
No.
you.
Everything went to what we said it was going to go to.
That's right. And we had some good generous donors, and we actually have a little bit of money left over that we're looking at trying to do some more with. It's just we've been looking for a few ways to do it and haven't quite got there yet. But at the end of the day, it was humbling to have people come up and say,
Trust us.
I had people coming up wanting to give $20. You know what I mean? I had some people who handed me a wad of cash, and I didn't know when we did the Christmas drive. A guy that I know handed me a wad of cash, and I just stuck it in my pocket. I said, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." And when I went to deposit it into the bank, it was like $500 in 20s.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, you know what I mean? And that was just that was just one guy out of his pocket. And then we also had some good, generous companies, right, that came and gave us, good large sums of money that we were able to do a lot with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And from the time that the first thing we did, we knew that people needed food. We felt that people needed a good hot meal, and we were actually contacted by a group of pastors
Yep.
at a church in Kentucky
Yep.
that wanted to do something and come down, and they had seen our ministry and everything and talked
Yep.
with us and different things and wanted to
Yeah.
partner with us to come down in this area and do something. So
Yeah.
we were able to do that and come out, and what we did was we knew that we wanted to feed people.
That's right.
But the whole idea of it was that, you can give somebody a hot dog and a drink of water, and they're going to be hungry again. They're going to
Yeah.
be thirsty again.
Yeah.
But we also wanted to give them the bread of life,
That's right.
and some
Yeah.
living water so that they never hunger and thirst again.
That's
So
right.
we wanted to make it, we wanted to feed people a hot meal, but we wanted to make it focused around sharing God's word.
Yeah.
And so we kind of scheduled a thing where we was out there for 2 days?
Yeah.
2 days we were out there.
Wasn't it
with
3? Did we do 3?
I think it was 2. Was it 3 days? It's been a while now. I don't
I
even
know it
remember.
all ran together. We had a lot of people who volunteered a lot to do that.
Yeah.
And that really just touched me because as much as I love to share on the podcast and stuff, I love seeing how many people, like the pastor in Kentucky, he's not even in an area that was,
Effective.
affected by that. But the people who showed up and just wanted to help and worked for hours and hours and sweating and hungry themselves and stuff, and the people who showed up who needed help, it was nice to know, like you said, that we fed them, but also, I know every single one of them didn't leave without having that little paper, having Derek or Owen or someone else share And they were a lot more receptive than I even thought that they would be.
Everybody that come in to eat food got a gospel tract that we had wrote and wrote ourselves, which we need to be able to make available here soon for maybe.
It needs a few more edits. I started that process of editing it, but it needs, because there was a few clerical things and a few additives it needed, but we will inevitably make that, just free to, and it kind of already is on our website, right? The basis of that gospel track is available on the website to go read.
That is definitely one of the things. We want to make that free gospel tract available as many people as want it.
Absolutely.
And that is certainly one of the things that I think, anybody that donates now would be able to contribute to that mission, that we could get this gospel tract that lays out some simple apologetics and really goes into sharing the faith and what we believe, why we believe it, to make that available to a lot of people. But everybody that come and ate that day got a gospel tract. Throughout the whole day, we had different singers and preachers from different churches, different denominations, different people coming in that we trusted that were singing and preaching, and that went on continuously all day. We fed people from maybe each day from 10 or 11 to
It was like 7 at
7,
night.
8, 9 o'clock.
It was dark when we left,
Yeah.
and there was still a lot of daylight. It was dark every day when we left, and
We had to go several times while we were doing it to get more food because we just had so many people. that
Well,
showed
we
up.
totaled it up, and it was
a little
over
over
1,000
plates,
meals.
yeah.
It was
It was-
over 1,000.
I mean, I was
meals.
hoping, I was like, Lord, please send us 20 or 30 people.
yeah,
I mean,
we
it was
were
just
afraid we were buying too
amazing.
much, and we were out the
Yeah.
first 2 hours of food.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had no idea what to expect, and just going back to what you was talking about the church in Kentucky that wanted to come down with us, they seen through social media and our podcast that we were about that. I
Right.
mean, we wanted to do those things, and so once again, that to me, that's super humbling that they approached us of all the different ministries that have got involved in Hurricane Helene. They reach out to us, and they gave us a
ultimately,
great
without their
opportunity.
help with boots on the ground from them,
We couldn't have done it.
what we did would not have happened
No,
without them.
because,
So
I mean,
I'm very grateful that they
yeah.
did show up and did all that they
They
did.
had a convoy of people, and then we had a bunch of volunteers who were just itching to come. And we just had a lot of, different Christian people who just wanted to do something. And we
had
really
people
were just an
from
avenue.
The elderly in our church, like Hattie, and they would sit at the little tables and hand out the gospel tracts. And I'll always think of Kurt and Renee when we did that because they worked so hard at that grill,
They
and
worked so
it was
hard.
just the best. I mean, everybody worked really hard.
And everybody had a
I have
smile
to
on their
say
face.
Everybody was
Yeah.
happy
I
to
was
do it.
sweating like a hog.
That
I know
was one
Kurt
of the
was.
most memorable moments of my life, probably.
Yeah. It was one of the most
such a
favorite things
blessing.
I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, it was.
It definitely is. It brought me a lot of joy, you know what I mean? And it was stressful. Like having everything, try to fall in place, not knowing what's going to happen, and then run out of food and needing to run out. We ran out several times
Yeah.
to get food and such, you know what I mean? And so, and then we had good faithful people who wanted to cook that food, and then we had a line full of people who was handing that food out. And my favorite part of the whole thing is, once we kind of got a feel for what was happening, we had brought singers in, or you really are the ones who really kind of organized that. And we brought those people in, and we preached some, Adam preached and whatnot. But my favorite part is because not a lot of people really stuck around for that, right?
Right.
My favorite part was when me and you and Adam started taking gospel tracts and going and handing it to people, talking to people, asking them if they were saved.
Right.
And one particular instance that really just shook me to my core. There was a guy, and they drove up, but there was 2 or 3 of them in a truck, and the truck was kind of rough. And I get to talking to him, and I hand him a gospel tract, and I'm talking to him some, and I'm asking him about his situation. He lets me know he's homeless. He's living out of that truck, and those 2 people that's with him they're just trying to skate by. And I tell him, I said, well, there's plenty of food. Gives me places what you need, yada yada. And I start to ask him. I said, do you know the Lord Jesus Christ? And he said, I die to the flesh daily. And I like to fell out. Like I have
Just
never.
working
How did it
straight
come
down.
apart?
Yeah.
I've never said that. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
yeah,
a
I'm saved.
tremendous
That's the typical
response.
answer. I've never said I die to the flesh daily. What an answer
Yeah.
that was. You know what I mean? And to me, that shows a degree of sincerity, that had to be present there because of all the people, I met a lot of saved people who didn't, necessarily seem like they knew the Lord. They just wanted food and thought that that was the answer.
Yeah.
They had to
You're
give
trying
get
to
food.
communicate, you don't have to be saved, but
Yeah.
and it's even better if they say they weren't, because then you can communicate, earnestly with them and
Yeah.
try to help them and stuff. But
And we had several people that wanted to pray during that
Yeah,
time
we had
for,
several, you know what I mean?
salvation or to rededicate their lives to the Lord. And I just think it was just a tremendous thing.
It was.
And aside from all that, we wanted to take advantage and do something else during that. And so everybody that came in got the gospel track, heard preaching, heard the singing, got the food, but then they also got to put their information down for us and list some of the things that they needed.
Yeah. Some of the physical
Because we
needs.
had seen at this point, we had seen all kinds of stuff come in, and it's very good that so much support come in. But we kind of felt like, and I believe the populace of the area kind of felt like there's a lot of stuff that's not needed.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to do something a little bit different and try to supply people with things
Yeah.
that they actually needed.
Yeah.
And so we took their
Yeah.
information and they was able to list some things that they actually needed, was needs that were not being met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we took those lists and then we went back and we were able to, thanks again to the generous donors who
Yeah.
trusted us to do what was needed
Yeah.
and trusted us to do that job. We were able to pack totes
Yep.
full of supplies that these people had actually needed.
Yep.
And we were able to actually organize them totes by name.
Yep.
And we were
Mhm.
able to contact those people after the
We got
feeding
phone
was
numbers
done.
and addresses for the most part. Some people didn't leave the best contact information, but we were able to still get. I think
What was sad was there was some people that really didn't.
They didn't have a way
They
to give
didn't
you a
have-
They didn't
contact
have
information.
That-
there was
that
a lot of
was
No
people
the
that
phone,
didn't
no
have a
address.
chance,
Yeah.
that
yeah,
Yeah,
they
if you've
gave.
lost your house, you obviously don't have a phone,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we ended up with I think it was like 35 totes that went directly to people who decided to fill out. Then we had 15 extra, which some of those people who came needing a tote really needed 2 totes. And the reason why we chose totes was, in all of this, in the area that we did, the food drive portion, is that what we learned is that a lot of those people were walking up and down the riverbanks trying to find their
Collect
stuff.
their stuff.
We
yeah.
actually
And they
went
had
up
nothing to
to,
put it in.
we actually went up to Del Rio, which is real close to Hot Springs, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And we went up there and we seen people walking around trying to find their lost possessions
Yep.
and putting them in totes. And so one of the churches in that area told us that, something that people's not thinking about but is really valuable to people right now is totes.
Yep.
Because they have to have something to put
It's
their
the
stuff in.
simplest stuff you don't
You
really
don't
think
think
of. They
about.
were so inundated with water and food. And of course they need that. But I mean, when you've lost everything,
Yeah.
I mean, you need
Well,
a
and I
lot
gotta
more
give
than
a
that.
shout out. Now, this is not patting ourselves on the back, but just to all the churches in the area.
Yeah.
I mean, the government did not help this area.
No.
The churches helped this area. If
That's
it
right.
had not been for churches
Yep.
doing all that they did for the communities that were so heavily affected,
Yeah.
then it would have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
A lot worse.
Absolutely.
The government, FEMA, it's a
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah.
They didn't do nothing.
We had a lot of good local first responders that helped out a lot too. Even with our totes, the
Mhm.
ones that we physically couldn't get to, because we only had a few volunteers to hand deliver and things like that. And some of those areas were still pretty, washed out stuff and hard to get around. And the local state PD, gave us an avenue. We dropped quite a bit of those totes off, particularly the extra ones that we had from people who didn't come claim them. And they did deliver those out for us to the addresses that we had listed. And so that was a blessing too, and we did some inquiry with the local fire departments, and they gave us some good information, and it was just a good local group effort. I mean, it just was. There was a lot of people who just wanted to help people.
Yeah.
I love that we were able to get the kids so involved when we packed the totes. We had like an assembly line of
Yes.
other youth, And something that my son Owen said to me when we were leaving that day that we'd done the cookout and all the food, he said, Mom, why does something like this have to happen before we come together and do something like this?
That's
And I was
true.
like,
Ouch.
yeah.
I mean, stuff like that is needed in all kinds of places.
There's
you know?
always people in need.
There's always people, and one of the things that hurt. There was uh, um, he was a county commissioner, showed up while we were doing
Cookout.
the cookout deal that we did. He showed up and he wanted to talk to me, and I've never seen I guess a person in a political office like that care so much.
Yeah.
And it really hurt me because he come up to me and with tears, I watched the tears run down his eyes.
Yeah.
And he talked to me about families that he knew needed heaters.
Yeah.
And they had a need for these
Yeah,
heaters.
keep in mind it's freezing cold.
Yeah,
when
it
this
was
happened.
cold.
Yeah.
It was very cold.
And at which point, I told him I would pray with him about it, and we had prayer about it, but we didn't have the funds to supply the need that he
At
was
that
talking
time,
about
yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
But that really hurt me because I wanted so bad to be able to help
Yeah.
him help
So
those
here's your
people,
haters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was people that genuinely cared,
Yeah.
and local people who genuinely cared, and that really hurt. But funny thing is how God just supplies our needs and stuff. We prayed about it, and then he left, and he showed up. That was in the morning, and he showed up again that night and talked to me again. He said, "I just want to stop by and thank you for praying with me. So I just want to let you know we found a generous donor that bought all the heaters we needed for the people that he knew about at
Yeah,
the time. So
God just worked it out.
just worked it out."
Now, was
Wow.
he the same one that had like 2 or 3 totes that we made for because he had some of those families? Was that the same guy? Because there was a guy.
I don't know.
Yeah, there was one person who had come and asked for totes. He didn't need them. He delivered them to some families he knew. I remember that. So, I mean, you just had a lot of people get involved in that way, and it was just, so amazing just to watch God move. Because even though, like filling those totes sounded simple,
Yeah.
but when it come
Yeah.
time to buy the stuff that went in them and decipher through all those lists,
Then decide what was worthy to even go in it.
it was stressful. Like it was stressful.
Yeah.
And then when you go to buy the stuff, like the way that we were trying to order it in bulk, it wouldn't let you check out that way online. And then we bought some stuff in person. And it was just, all of those things. It was a lot of effort. It took us weeks to organize everything, and it was just it was a super stressful time. But the end result and everything that went in it, because like this is where we started this ministry on what we wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and then less than a year later, we're doing exactly what we desired to do, and
And
that's
God
how-
blessed it to accomplish more. When we say all this, and we didn't have ginormous funds to go do all this with, but I believe God was in it. I believe God wanted it to happen. And in that, you think about how efficiently it ran.
Yeah.
Because I did the numbers looking back after everything and knowing how many plates of food that we served
Yeah.
to people. And and this is with Cokes and Sprites and everything
Because
else.
we
you know.
budgeted for this thing,
Yeah.
and it turned out way different than what
It
we
turned
budgeted.
out to where we was
As they
feeding
do.
people, and I can't quote exactly, but it was something like $1.13 a plate of food and a
And we
drink.
anticipated about $4 and something a plate, if what I remember.
It was like
so,
it was pretty much $1 a plate,
yeah,
which is just it doesn't even, the numbers don't even add up.
they don't
You
honestly
know, but-
No.
for what we spent and what we were donated.
It was
like
loaves and fishes
for
type
us,
moment.
yeah, for
It wasn't
us,
as much when God is
Yeah.
in it, for sure.
for us, just getting off the ground, what we got donated was a lot of money, right? But in the grand scheme of things,
For other
For the
for other
needs.
people doing the same thing, it's not a lot.
it's
of
a
money.
we got
It's
a drop in the bucket. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
penny to their dollar. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just the truth. But the way that we were able to stretch it was just amazing.
It always
Amazing.
blowed my mind, like the amount of stuff that you would tell me that we were able to get and do, and I was like, it just went so much further than I ever dreamed that it would. There's so much more response than I ever dreamed. I was like, how are people going to know about Out of the Wilderness doing this thing that we're offering? And God has
People
just
They just
sent
showed
them.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll
Do
work
it and they will
out.
come.
And the other thing is too is like, when we were so long through the day, like from 10 to dark, you know what I mean? That's a big portion of the day. And so you're there for long periods of lulls. And then all of a sudden you'd have, 30 people come through your line and, you'd be fighting to get trays filled so that you could get
Cut
the food.
fries. We'd be
And-
cutting
Cut
fries
fries,
like a
yeah.
maniac.
Yeah.
It was something like
Those fries were so
600
good.
pounds of potatoes that
Yeah.
we make
Yeah.
fries out
Lots
of.
of
or something.
potatoes.
And so throughout the day, I mean, it seems like, you didn't serve that many people, but then at the end of it all, you're like, man, we served a lot of people,
A
who
lot,
come
yeah.
through here. And it was such a blessing to see that move and to see God work.
You'd see
in that.
someone come through and they'd be alone, and then they'd come back and they'd have a car full of people who
Yeah.
they were all the little kids, a lot of hungry people.
Yeah.
And they would need meals like, they weren't just hungry then. They were like, this will be good for breakfast tomorrow, blah, blah,
Seen a
blah. I
lot
mean, they're
of,
just hungry.
I've seen a lot of also nevertheless Christians.
Yeah.
A lot of nevertheless Christianity where
Yeah.
people were saying, in spite of losing my
Everything,
home and
yeah.
losing my business, losing my, everything, in spite of all that, God's good.
Yeah.
We seen the one lady that showed
Mhm.
up and she lost her home, she lost her everything.
She lost everything.
Everything.
Had no clue.
But she come and she was saying, God's been too good to me for me to, be down and stuff. And she just
was a
praised
great
God the
testimony.
whole time.
Yeah.
And then after we started giving the totes out a little while after that, she actually let us know. She come back to get her tote and actually let us know that a Christian organization was building her a new house.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
That
Was
was
that the
awesome.
woman you talked to on the phone who was she remembered you so well? And she was
Yeah.
like, guess what?
Yeah.
And she was excited.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, she was a great lady too.
Yeah.
And that was good to see the Lord bless her that way. And when we when we got all these things, it took us several weeks, and like we said, we did the food drive sometime in September, which is pretty much when the podcast ended. We had anticipated going through probably November, I'd say, and then take a short break and then pick back up like we are now, but
It was just a lot.
it got too much, and we couldn't record and do everything. Even the devotionals, it just become too
We
much.
needed a bigger team. We need to collect the
We-
loan ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to be able to do everything.
Yeah, so we just come down to a point. It was like we just need to prioritize because we
We were just doing
Well,
more
one
real
of the
life
things
stuff
is
and less
that
online.
That's right.
we don't get paid for this.
Yeah.
We do this because we feel like God's called us to do this, but we
Yeah.
have jobs and other stuff that we
It just took
other
so many hours of the
responsibilities
day.
alive,
Yeah.
and that's extremely difficult sometimes to be able to do this, but we're not quitting. We feel like God's called us
We're
to this.
fired
and,
up.
We're
Yeah.
fired up.
More
More than
fired
ever.
than
That's right. Yeah.
But we want to stay faithful to it, and we're back, and we may continue to do this in seasons. Hopefully, not take as long of a break in
Yeah.
the future as what we had to this last time, but we want to be faithful to what we're doing, and we ultimately want to do this, but we also want to do more boots on the ground stuff like we've been doing.
Yeah.
Because right after that, we saw another need.
Yeah.
In that a lot of families were affected,
Yeah.
a lot of homes lost, and a lot of kids probably was not going to have a very good Christmas this
Right.
year.
Yeah.
So as far as that concerned, probably not next year either.
Yeah.
But we saw that need, and again, thanks to many
It just fell into place.
generous donors and things, that we were able to do a toy drive this
Yeah.
year for kids in the area.
I loved doing the
It
toy
was
drive.
so
I
That was
loved
the
picking it
most
out,
fun
and I
I've
loved
ever
hearing
had.
you guys how excited the kids were to go through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was good.
And that was another, lows and fishes kind of moment, is because, we started out with, okay, let's find some kids, let's get them some toys, right? And then all of a sudden we had 2 schools worth of kids, and they were like, okay, how are we going to get so many
Yeah.
toys?
Misty and I in the checkout line, and after they were about to run our card, we were like, Lord, please don't let the card decline, Lord, please.
I don't know if I've ever seen a receipt that long in my life.
It was,
a lot of
a
toys.
lot of toys.
Yeah. And then we ended up with more toys than what we even needed, and were able to give to a 3rd school, which we donated that directly through.
Well, let's go into like how that got brought up, because we said we wanted to do a toy drive, right?
Yeah.
we wanted to do a toy drive because so many kids were not going to have a good Christmas.
Local social worker, that's who it was. She was a social worker, right?
Right. We started making phone calls to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of people were called, and it eventually led to this school system in this affected area
Yeah.
that the public school system was going to allow us to come in and bring the toys in. They were going to assemble all the children in the schools
Yep.
together so that we could present them a toy
Yep.
after we got to share God's word with them.
That's right.
And
That's
we
the
got
kicker.
to go preach to schools full of kids in a public school system.
Yep.
You know, and to think what a blessing and quite frankly a miracle that is.
Yeah.
That in today's age that we were able to do that is that was I got to say that was probably the most awesome experience of my life.
Yeah,
That was
absolutely.
awesome.
Yep. Yeah, and we went out, we looked for schools and we looked for kids to give toys to, like you said, and then those schools popped up as an opportunity, and we had like
Some of the most needy schools.
A lot
Schools
of-
that were needy even if there wasn't a flood.
Before the
some
flood, yeah,
poverty in
issues.
those areas too, and then the Lord blessed us with donors once again. You know what I mean? And we were able to go out and start organizing, and we had just a lot of people rally behind us. Once again, they wanted to be involved. They wanted to, if they couldn't give, they donated their time. They helped us sort through those toys. They helped us count those toys. They helped us segregate those toys. We put those toys in totes. We loaded them up in trailers that were donated. We had people donate their time to haul those trailers to where we needed them to go. It was just amazing outpouring of effort, and we ended up we personally handed out over 700 toys, but I think ultimately the total after we donated to the third school directly through the social worker was close to 800 toys, if I remember right. And so, there was a really good mixture of boys and girls, and they all got at least one item. I know some of the items we had was smaller, and I think some of the kids made away with like 2 small toys
And
as
all
opposed
in
to one big
all,
one.
there was probably over 1,000 people that we got to preach to.
Easy 1,000
day.
people.
Teachers,
Yeah.
kids alike.
In one day. That's by far the most,
Let's take it.
unless I've had people listen to me online that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As far as in person in one day, that's the most people I've ever had the opportunity to preach to. And that was just like to see these kids get dismissed from, their classes and just watch them file into that gym and watch them bleachers just fill up and fill up and fill up. And you're like, this is a lot of people. Like, you know what I mean? And then to get to share the word, we had, like, once again, local first responders, had a lot of police officers who come out, and local PD and different things who come out to help us hand those toys out. And then, there was a lot of efficiency, that we didn't plan. We planned to the best of our abilities
Calm when
and
there should have been
budgeted.
chaos.
That's right. And
Yeah.
they just was, they single file. The kids were appreciative, the cops got a lot more hugs than we did, but that's okay.
That was funny. You wear a uniform, you're getting a hug.
That's
You're the
right.
hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I really that was just incredible to me because I mean it's one thing, and we love everybody. We love the adults and stuff like that. But when you can put joy on a child's face,
Oh.
there's nothing like that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of Hurricane Helene and stuff that these children needed a good Christmas.
No.
But it was, there's a lot of kids that's, in poverty-stricken areas that could use that every year. And I know that's something that we're definitely talking about, maybe continuing.
Yeah.
If the opportunity presents itself where we can share God's word and with that many people, kids, and be able to put a smile on their face and a toy in their hand, that's something that we may want to do again.
I agree. Yeah.
And
I hope
maybe
we
even
can make it
expand.
annual. Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping we can make that annual, and then maybe next year we'll be able to get it to 1,000 kids. You know what I mean? So That
goals.
would be a blessing.
Mhm.
That would be good.
Yeah.
I think we should maybe title this episode of the podcast just a big thank you episode.
Yeah, honestly.
Because
Lots of thank
I'm
yous.
really thankful to the people that made all this possible.
Absolutely.
Because this has been, in the past few months, we've been absent from online, but what's transpired in our ministry and what's transpired in some of the things that we've been able to do,
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for
Mm-mm.
nothing.
No. And hopefully we can be in moderation, right, and be more consistent with the social media part and the podcast, and maybe that won't fall off when we're able to do, other things, and we can find a little more balance, because it became very unbalanced between pastoring a church and then working and raising our families and different things. It just became extremely unbalanced at a point. We just
Well,
I
not
think
to mention
all
we
of us,
lost our
yeah.
podcast room.
Oh yeah.
We
did.
moved.
Yeah,
And yeah, our podcast room was no more. And it's actually right now, it's kind of like under construction, I
Well,
guess you
tell
could
us what
say.
we're doing right now, Derek.
with podcast room.
Where's our
Right.
podcast room right now?
Oh well, right now the Lord has blessed us to kind of celebrate our Out of the Wilderness Ministries anniversary.
Mhm.
It's 1 year to this month. Probably not to the day. I think we're a few weeks after.
The 3rd or 4th.
It's the
What?
3rd or 4th
The
of
3rd or
February
4th.
of 24.
Out of Cheddar's.
Yeah,
That's
out
when
of
we
Cheddar's
made
in
the
Morristown.
commitment.
That's right.
The cheddars.
We all kind of sit down and we expressed to our wives what we had on our hearts, what we wanted to do, and it was just an instant, let's do it, and then
Yeah.
that was the launching of Out of the Wilderness, and that was our first miracle was how do we start a ministry? Like what,
Yeah.
because I've
Never
had
done that
ministries before,
There's
the-
legalities
but they were just
and everything.
going around and preaching and different things.
Yeah,
We wanted to be
a
legit.
legit.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
wanted to be a
Legit.
legit ministry. And so, the Lord blessed us with the funds that we needed for that to get our nonprofit status and to make all these filings and do all these initial documents that we had to do to become, legal. And God blessed us through all that. And, that just all started with us sitting down and saying, we want to do this. And then it seems like every stage of this ministry has been us trying to keep up with it.
Yeah.
Because what
And
we
we failed at that at times.
we definitely have. What we thought we were going to have to really push for in a lot of situations ended up just being us chasing it, because once the door opened, like it was a whirlwind. When we said we wanted to do something, there was always somebody there who said, okay, well, how are we going to do this? And then they just were like, wanting us to move. And so
Yeah.
then that put, opportunity, but it also put obligation and pressure. And so like we had to deliver
Yeah.
at that point. And so it feels like
That's
we've
what I like about
run-
it being, a legitimate ministry, is because you can't just. People have committed their
Expectations.
money to you, and you can't just be like, "We'll get to that." It holds you accountable, and I like that
I do
about
too.
it. And
It's nice.
like we don't have 1 million followers or anything like that on our podcast, and we're definitely not
Not worried
swimming
about
in
that.
donations. But it's been every time we've needed something in order to do what we needed to do, it's came
Yep.
every single time.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
that's just a blessing from God. That's confirmation to me that we've been doing what we were
Well,
supposed to do.
You talk about followers and stuff like that, and people that watch and listen and stuff. And I heard a great response from a pastor one time. He was asked by another pastor, how many people are in your church on Sunday mornings? And, that's kind of a response, I think, that sometimes people, maybe somebody was getting a high horse about how many people was at his church,
Yeah,
But the pastor's response was, all that God give me.
that's right.
And
That's what the Lord said too.
I really like that.
That's right.
How many people have come to us and told us that a podcast episode or a devotion that we've shared has touched them? And, I love that. Well, that's just a proof that what we're doing, God is planting that seed. He is using it,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be to 1 million people. It can be to 10 people. And if
That's-
that impacts those 10 people,
Yeah,
then
fine
that's
with
worth
that.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
And doing these podcasts too, it's often been like, who's actually watching this? We have, I think we're sitting at like 240 followers right now. At our highest, I think we got to 250, which in the grand scheme of YouTube is nothing. But we've actually had people reach out to us as like, when are you gonna put another podcast out? Why did you guys quit? And we've had to go through this same explanation of like, well, we've been busy with like real world things. We're going to come back around to it, but like we just don't have the time. And so, we'll try to. This is our relaunch for season 2. It's Valentine's Day weekend. It's been a good getaway. It's been a good kind of reset for our ministry. This is, kind of the anniversary of Cheddar's, a year ago. This is our sit down and kind of repurpose to what are our plans going forward. And so what we intend on doing is for season 2, we have a couple guests that are loosely lined up. We're hoping to maybe do some guests this season, and get some faces on here that people might know. And do some good theological discussions. But other than that, we're going to keep up with what we've been doing because our goal has never been to be internet famous. I don't need to unseat Joe Rogan with the best podcast in the world, right?
We're coming for you, Joe.
We want this ministry, this podcast, to continue to do what it's already done, right? Continue to let people know what we're about and give us avenues for when there are things that we can make an impact in real life, that this was the way that we did that. And so we want to continue to do that. And one cool thing that we got to do, and this is where things got inspired, is me and Owen got to go to Crown College a year ago, and we got to go again this year. And why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Like what you were saying, I think a lot of times when you see somebody go start a ministry or something on social media and YouTube and all this stuff, you're like, oh, they're trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah.
And that is not what we've tried to do at all.
No.
We want people to hear us talk about God's word and things like that, but it's not to glorify ourselves.
No.
We just want to see Jesus glorified.
Right.
And who this podcast is able to affect or who's able to hear it, that's kind of up to God.
Yeah.
And we just, it's kind of like the pastor said, all that God give me,
That's
and
right.
we want to reach all that God will give us to reach.
That's right.
But this started at Crown College. We've been fortunate enough for the last several years to go to a men's meeting at Crown College in was it Powell, Tennessee?
Yeah, pal.
And so last year we went, and as we were there, we were kind of bouncing around, and we went in the library.
Yeah.
And we seen a thing about Charles Spurgeon and how Charles Spurgeon preached an average of 10 times per week.
Yeah.
And we thought about that.
Yeah.
We thought, wow, he's preaching 10 times a week. Charles Spurgeon wasn't somebody that just preached Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday. No, Charles Spurgeon was a street preacher.
That's right. He was on the streets every day. Yep.
Every day he was preaching somewhere. And we talked about the squandered opportunities that we have.
Yeah.
Because we don't. And we talked about, we preach in churches and we go to here and go there and we'll preach. But, those are invitations that we have to go preach at churches. But how much time are we wasting when we could be telling somebody about Jesus and how, he died for their sins and he died in our place so that we could be forgiven, and, the life-saving, changing power of the gospel. Why are we squandering our time away doing anything else? Why are we not trying to do all that we could do to tell someone about Jesus? And so we started putting our minds together about how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we reach more people? The most efficient way to tell more people about Jesus.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we've done street preaching. If you've checked out some of our YouTube stuff, I think we got YouTube videos on there about our street preaching adventures and stuff like that, but which we want to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was
Adventure on
fun.
Street Preaching.
Yeah. Adventures in Street Preaching.
Yeah, that's the title.
But I think that we ultimately, as we left that meeting and we started talking about it and stuff, I think the conversation come up I think both of us were eat up with it.
We were tore all to pieces. And I'm telling you, I was again this year too. I mean, that's just an amazing meeting, and getting to go through that college, and they have a lot of history there. They have a museum. We'd walked around the museum this year. They had the tabernacle layout, which we're going to get to. They're going to actually have a replica the March 20th through the 23rd that we're going to get to take our church up to.
I can't wait to do that.
I'm so excited because
That's
I'm
really
actually
fun.
going to get to preach in. It's just a replica, but I'm a Bible nerd and I love the tabernacle, and I'm so stoked to get to sing a couple songs and to preach a short message inside that tabernacle, and then hear the tabernacle man is what he calls himself. You can look him up online, and to get to go through that history, right, and to learn things that maybe I don't. I've done a lot of studying on the tabernacle, but I'm sure he's got things that I've never known about, history wise and things like that.
And it's incredible to actually be able to see it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
But going back to the fire, I would call it a fire in my belly. I had a fire in my belly when we left that men's meeting this year, and this last year, I feel like when we got in the vehicle to drive home, me and you were just like, at first we were kind of like, what are we doing? Like, we've got to do something more. I mean, we were just both eat up. Yeah.
Derek and Owen got away from each other, and Derek called me and he was like, so we're going to be, and then he had like all these big plans. And at the time I was like, can we really do that? And now look at us now.
I know, it's crazy.
It's mind blowing what all we accomplished in a year.
Yeah. We got back to our, we met up and then rode together. And once we got back to where we split up, I think we sit there and talk for another hour about.
It was like a first date. You didn't want to pay for it.
A really good first date, yeah. Meant to be, you two.
Yeah, but I mean, it was just, it's such an inspiration, and it felt really good to come back and see some of the things that they had going on, right? They've got a new pastor at their church, and man, I really liked hearing him. He was dandy.
Clarence Sexton founded Pastor Clarence Sexton.
Yeah.
And I think he was a great guy, and didn't know him, but heard a lot about him, and obviously done a great job with Crown College and Temple Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And then the new pastor they have there at Temple Baptist Church, I can't think
remember
of his name off the top of my head now.
I just remember his accent. Like, it was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
He's an American who lived in the UK for 15 years, so he no longer had an American accent, but he didn't quite have an English accent either. And so he just had this.
He sounded like I was listening to Charles Spurgeon.
That's what it
And I
gave
was
me
like,
too, because
I can
Charles
get behind
Spurgeon
that.
didn't he come to America at some point?
I don't
He
know
should
if he
start his
did or
own
not.
podcast.
I'm
there
not
you
sure.
go.
I was thinking that he pastored a church in Chicago at some point.
That's D.L. Moody.
Well, I know D.L. Moody did, but I'm thinking that, well, I don't know. Somebody's going to fact check me on here and make fun of me. I don't know. But I'm like you, I mean, it was just like he just had that way of speaking that just like commanded the room,
Yeah.
and that inspired me for a lot of things as well, with what I want to accomplish as a
Well, and they
pastor.
had different speakers this year too, and I felt it was very just gospel oriented.
Yes.
And if anything, just light a fire in you. It's just
Yeah.
the gospel.
That's right.
Yeah. Just hearing the gospel preached like that just really,
It was amazing.
it was awesome for that many people, and it just, it inspires you.
And to experience all that and then reflect on what that did to us from the start and where God has pulled us to
It
now.
was a really awesome experience to think that. I think just being there and knowing where it started and thinking back about how it started,
Yeah.
and then thinking back a year later how what God had allowed us to do in this ministry from the time that we
Yeah.
started it.
Yeah.
And looking back on that, at the time when you go through things and you live in life, sometimes it feels like, you're not making leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
But then you look back from
Mm-hmm.
the past year and you're like, wow, we did a lot in a year.
Yeah.
You can't see the forest
Really
for the
did.
trees when you're in the
Yeah.
middle of it.
And that kind of motivated you again,
It did,
to see
yeah.
how God blessed it, because, sure, we have, we've failed
Yeah.
in a certain sense, trying to keep up with different things and life and trying to do the podcast and everything like that. But you see what God allowed us to do, and you see that, many times we fail God. God does not fail us.
That's
And
right.
if we just stay faithful and keep trying, keep plugging along, it's crazy to see where He takes you and how He brings you through more and more and more. And the more you get
Yeah.
accomplished and kind of get under your belt, and it kind of makes you think, well, I got to do all of that. What if I just go on a little farther?
Yep.
What else can I do?
Yep.
And ultimately, I believe it's what God allows us to do. But I believe that I believe what we're doing is uh, Jeremiah.
He has something to say.
That's right.
Yeah.
He agrees with you,
He
Dad.
agrees.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's what it is.
Amen, Dad. Amen. Yeah, buddy. But I'm excited to see where God's going to take us from here.
Yes, for sure.
I'm excited about season 2. I am fired up. Right?
Yeah.
That's our slogan.
Fired up.
2025.
And so I hope that all of you are too. I hope that you give us a listen. I hope that more people can get a hold of our content and can help us further the gospel, help us to grow this ministry. Because as much as what we're able to accomplish in pretty much spare time, right? I mean, and we have to do these things in spare time because my pastorship and my family takes priority, right? Your pastorship and your family takes priority, and so this becomes part of our spare time after our work week. And so, I would love to see this become our full-time job, right? So that we could do a lot more. But whatever God puts me in charge of, I'm satisfied with.
Right.
And so whatever He puts us in charge with, and whatever He lays out in 2025 for us, I just want to be ready to meet it.
There's an incredible amount of joy that you really just can't explain to someone who's not following Jesus. But there's so much joy to be had in working for the Lord, seeing the fruits of that. And the Lord just gives you this feeling that you can't even express to someone. Joy in the Lord just goes beyond any other joy that you could really ever experience. And I've loved it. And as we've done it, I feel like I've grown leaps and bounds just in my personal
Absolutely.
life.
It's a blessing. It's blessed me quite a bit.
Yep.
Jeremiah likes it too.
He does.
He's awake.
Well, everyone, we thank you for tuning in. I'm happy to be able to close out our first. We've talked about this for a month now. We got to get the podcast launched in February, and so here we are. It's launched, right? I can't wait till this drops. We're able to drop this after editing on YouTube and see where God takes us this
We
year.
got to get off this thing so we can go get matching airbrush t-shirts.
That's right. All right. Until next time, friends.
Bye-bye.
Bye.